Hey guys, my name is Michael Parsons. I'm the Director of Instrumental and Popular Music at Briarcrest Christian School in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm also the Director of Sound Fusion, which is the University of Memphis flagship popular music ensemble. Myself and my colleague Stephen Potasic from Samford University are excited to share with you just a bit of experiences that we've had teaching popular music, and really hope to inspire some of you guys and perhaps spark some conversations. We look forward to sticking around after this presentation and answering any questions that you might have, or just engage in some conversations via Zoom. So I'll start off by talking about my experience here at Briarcrest. I've been here for 15 years, and when I first came, I inherited a program that had 17 students. It was a dying traditional band program. And when I took the job, I was just trying to find any way possible to inspire the students, to get them excited to make music. And fortunately, one of my colleagues here at Briarcrest sent me a video of a student whose name is Will Tucker, and he was playing down at B.B. King's on Beale Street. He was a 9th grade student at the time. And I thought, well, let's click on this link. Let's see what this is. It's a 9th grade kid. How good could it be? And this guy was absolutely amazing. He was playing guitar better than most professionals that I know in town. He had this amazingly soulful voice. It was ridiculous. And so I thought, we have to create something for this student. So immediately I texted that teacher back and I said, holy crap, this is amazing. Do we have any other students that play this style of music? And she sent me a whole list of kids that were not in band, were not in choir, and quite honestly, we're not a part of the music program here at Briarcrest. And so, long story short, I pulled those kids together and we created the very first popular music group here at Briarcrest that would eventually become Soundscape. And over the last 15 years, Soundscape has really emerged as one of the premier ensembles in the state of Tennessee. We've been invited to perform at the Montreux Jazz Festival. We recently performed at the Tennessee Music Educators Association Convention in Nashville. And the cool thing about Soundscape for us at Briarcrest is that what it did was it instantly allowed us to tap into the students' creative minds, their inspiration. They liked the music that we were playing. They could see themselves on stage singing and playing that same type of music at some point. And so we started to recruit a lot of younger students that would otherwise have never joined the band. At that point in time, joining the band was like social suicide, which is extremely sad to me, being a band kid myself and an orchestra kid. That was very sad, but I just knew that if we can get them in, if we can inspire them to make music, whether it's with a guitar or with a clarinet, we're gonna grow this thing. And so we were able to leverage sort of the cool factor that Soundscape had, and we grew the program from 17 kids to almost 100 in 5 years.
And I'm feeling good.
This popular music thing, this rock band, this was going to derail the traditional ensembles. And at that point, I didn't know if it would or not, but I just knew that we had to do something that was successful, and this was. And what I found was that it did, not only did it not derail our traditional ensembles, it actually grew the traditional ensembles. It allowed us to expand those groups by, leaps and bounds. Students would join band because they wanted to learn how to play an instrument. They wanted to learn music so that eventually they could be in soundscape. And I will say one of the things that I'm very happy that we did early on, that I think also helped sort of foster the growth for our traditional ensembles, was that we made it a requirement to be in band or choir if you were going to be in soundscape. And so that really helped fill out our band, our choir program, and eventually we expanded our popular music program to include an intermediate group known as 76 South. And then as of really just this past year, we've expanded it even further to include a full-on student-run record label. So that has been a really exciting new addition because for me, it's allowed me to find a new way to scale up our program. As you can imagine, we can only have so many popular music ensembles with just, one person running all of them. And part of what I discovered was the magic happens when the students, when they take creative ownership of the ensemble, when they are the ones selecting the music, when they're the ones that forget that this is a class, that they're getting a grade for this, and they just treat this like this is their band, this is their family, this is their crew, and they would spend hours after school, hours on the weekend, begging to come up and rehearse. And so what we've done with this record label is we've basically allowed them to create their own bands, to write their own songs, to use our recording studio, to produce, to record, to release, to distribute music, to monetize on their music. And my job has been to train them how to do that and to equip them to be successful in the music industry right here, right now in Memphis, Tennessee.
Thanks, Michael. Hey everybody, I'm so excited to be with you. My name's Stephen Potasic, and I'm the Commercial Music Program Director at Samford University. The program is going into its third year of existence this fall, and we have seen tremendous growth in the Division of Music as a result of this program. I believe going into this next year that it will be the largest major in our entire Division of Music with the most amount of students. As a result of having this, we recognize, hey, we want to provide a creative outlet for our students, beyond just jazz band or symphony or the choir or what have you. So we created Lakeshore, which is our commercial music ensemble. We've had a number of opportunities with Lakeshore to go out and recruit new students for the ensemble, but also new students to our programs. We've done a lot of things on campus that more traditional ensembles have just not been invited to. We're performing at tailgates for homecoming. We're performing in the university center and doing singer-songwriter nights and things like that. And we're also going out to local high schools. Just recently, we went to Mountain Brook High School, which is a great high school here close by. And not only did they want to have their music kids at the concert, but they wanted to have the entire school, so they invited the whole school to it, as well as their junior high, which was a huge honor for us. I don't think they did it to allow us to recruit to Samford University, but the music teachers wanted to get up there and really promote their programs, which they did. So this allowed us to play music for these students that they're used to hearing. It's music from their own vernacular. And then also talk to them about, hey, if this kind of stuff interests you, if you want to get involved in music, we've got a number of programs. And now kids are being invited to play saxophone, play piano, play guitar, play violin in the more traditional ensembles, as well as the more contemporary and popular music ensembles.
Thanks, Stephen. One of the things I'd like to talk about next is how, as a traditional ensemble director, I've noticed that my popular music students actually have a bit of an advantage over my traditional students in terms of just what they're learning every day in the classroom. So when I first started teaching, the national standards for music education were like they were printed above my desk, and every day I would come in and I would see these certain benchmarks that I always felt like, these are the things that I'm supposed to really focus in on and strive for every day. And I noticed that there were certain parts to the national standards that we rarely, if ever, got to in our traditional ensemble rehearsals. Things like improvisation. When do I ever, in a full band rehearsal, rehearsing standard repertoire, require my students to improvise? Very rarely, if ever. Songwriting, composition. Our goal is most of the time to put together a piece, rehearse it, get it ready for a concert, get it ready for festival, and hopefully have a good performance. Rarely, if ever, do we sit and think about creating a new piece or arranging a piece or writing a song. Several of these items were just left off of that list. And what I realized when we started developing the curriculum for our popular music students was that not only are these students getting the ensemble and the playing technique that is so important for every music student to get, and the reading abilities, they're getting this whole other world of education that my traditional students aren't getting. They're learning how to improvise. They're learning how to write songs. They're learning how to use music technology to record those songs and then to distribute those songs. They're learning music industry concepts, but they're also learning music theory in a way that my traditional students don't quite get either, because they're having to analyze their music. They're listening to music, they're writing a chord chart for it, they're doing a formal analysis of the music that they're playing. These are things that I really didn't do until college. And quite honestly, it's just built into the nature of what we do as popular musicians and popular music educators that I feel like my traditional students and probably most traditional ensembles across the nation rarely ever explore. And I think that's another cool thing about what we do.
Yeah, Michael talked a little bit about meeting the standards as it relates to music education. And for me in higher ed, we've got NASM. And so a number of things that we see on there are expanding students' abilities with composition, improvisation, recording techniques, arranging. And I'll say this, the popular music ensemble really sort of goes hand in glove with some of these things. It's a lot easier to approach writing a song for a pop music ensemble than it may be for a student to do in a symphonic orchestra. It may be easier for us to do a guitar solo or a saxophone solo in our Lakeshore ensemble than it would be for a traditional marching band. It may be simpler to arrange for 4 or 5 horn players than it would be for, an entire, band. And so some of these standards are able to be met not only just more easily, but in reality, they just find their home there. We started teaching 3 new courses this past year: recording techniques, music production, and songwriting. And we see students accessing some of those higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, like analysis and creativity, in these courses. And we're not just doing it through the context of popular music, but a number of these students are now going out to our more traditional instruments and artists and ensembles and providing services to them. So we've got in our recording class coursework where they're encouraged to go out and record a classical guitar, or to go out and record a quartet, a string quartet. One of our students went out and recorded the jazz band. And so now all of a sudden these ensembles are not only being archived, but they're also having the opportunity to have their music digitally distributed, as well as video presentations streamed over the internet. So they're having opportunities for larger audiences and audiences outside of the realm of just that moment, but opportunities for people to view these performances again and again. So a number of those NASM standards are now really much more accessible for students, not only within the popular music genre, but also within the more traditional classical genres as well. I'll also share that the type of students that a popular music ensemble can speak to are a lot of times kids outside of the traditional music students. I grew up in band and choir and orchestra, jazz band, you name it. I did it all. But there's a lot of kids out there, the hip hop heads, the bedroom producers, the rock band types, and they might not necessarily be interested in a traditional band ensemble. And we get the opportunity to reach those students right where they're at. There was an article in 2009 by a music educator, Ruth Gustafson, where she said that they saw a 97% attribution of Black students in their racially diverse school from the elective music programs. And as they began to look at that, they recognized, well, we're just performing traditional Western European music. I can tell you that here at Samford, as a result of even these past 2 years of having the program growing, we've not only looked at the curriculum of the popular music, commercial music major, but we've also looked at our more traditional curriculum as well and recognized we need to be more inclusive and diverse. Classes like music theory, music history, music literature have all received revamps as a result of this program and this ensemble being in existence. All of a sudden, genres that we weren't even talking about, let alone performing, are being invited to the table at Samford University, which is really exciting to me. We're studying, hip-hop artists, rock and roll artists, Latin music artists and bands, but we're also looking at women composers, and we're looking at minority composers in more traditional and classical European forms of music. It's hard enough for students who have the privilege of belonging to the school's racial, ethnic, and class majorities to have their selfhood invalidated in the musical classroom. But for minority students, music classes in particular are just one more instance where they can receive cultural humiliation and alienation, or acceptance, inclusion, and validation.
Thanks so much, Stephen. I am so glad you brought this up because as, again, a person who comes from the orchestral background, having a master's degree in orchestral conducting, I quickly learned when rehearsing Dvorak's Symphony No. 9, I learned something extraordinary about Dvorak that I did not know previously. And this is something that I share with all of my students, especially my popular music students. First of all, I use the name Dvorak and they're like, what? Who's that? So I am able to explain a little bit about who he was and what his contribution was to not only music, but specifically to American music. And here's the thing that I love, is that Dvorak, he said this. First of all, he came to the United States and was a teacher at the National Conservatory in New York City. And he said to his students, he said that American composers will find their voice when they look to the music of African and Native Americans. And I think that's compelling because the students that he taught went on to directly influence people like Aaron Copland, George Gershwin, Duke Ellington, by extension, Stevie Wonder, and then the rest of American musicians and composers. And so I just think it's fascinating that this European composer came over to the United States, late 19th century, and helped us find and develop our unique voice, which is totally linked to and tied into and wrapped up in the African American voice and the African American experience. And so I just think that's amazing. That Dvorak prophesied, I think, what we are experiencing and living and loving today.
In the 19th century, Western European music was really considered, really Western European culture was mostly considered sort of the hegemonic, cornerstone of society. We presented classical music as not necessarily one type of excellence in music, but we really presented it as universally timeless and sort of the elevated art forms, if you will. For me, I'm a classically trained pianist, and I grew up playing Chopin, still one of my favorite composers, Rachmaninoff, Beethoven, Mozart, all that. But when we begin to diversify our offerings, whether that's in an ensemble or how we're approaching more traditional classes like theory and music lit, all of a sudden we present Western European music within a context of the greater offerings provided throughout the world. Now all of a sudden it has a place, and it's not just sort of being the universally timeless and sole contributor to high art. If we look at recent data, we can see that classical music has, unfortunately slowly been sort of losing its place in society. A great data source for me is a website called Statista, and they did a study in 2018 of the music consumed in the United States, and they found that classical music was less than 1% of all music consumed, whereas they found that almost 22% of music was hip hop. And they also saw incredible percentages in rock and R&B and other genres like that. So that's not to say that those genres now need to be elevated above Western European music. No, not at all. It is simply saying that we must recognize a context where these things are sort of put in place as not the sole solution, but as a solution. I don't know about you, but the older I get, the harder it is to stay abreast of what is happening in the marketplace and what is hip.
Yep.
And I found this to be especially difficult in this day and age where music is predominantly streamed. Now we don't have just 3 radio stations playing popular music, country music, rock music, hip hop, whatever. We've got literally a limitless end of streaming playlists and artists who are reaching certain demographics. So we have this sort of deeper fragmentation of popular music. And for me, I can often feel overwhelmed about keeping abreast with this. One of the coolest things about leading a popular music ensemble is you don't, as a music educator, have to be the one with all of the relevant knowledge. You don't have to be the one who stays on top of every one of the latest trends. Michael and I both open up the doors at the beginning of every semester for students to bring in their favorite works, for students to have a seat at the table and almost flip the classroom, if you will, and allow them to present musical pieces. Not just that they like, but pieces that they have to provide a backbone for, hey, why should we do this piece? What audience does this reach? How is this going to help us as an ensemble learn deeper skills and abilities? How are we going to be able to incorporate the horn section or a violin player or a bass vocalist instead of a tenor or a soprano or an alto? Giving students a seat at the table really does allow them to kind of access some of those higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. And it's been really exciting for me to not only get to perform new music, but also learn from these students and really have them teach me how to go about doing it.
I love this again, Stephen. This is the part of what we do that I think is the most liberating. It's the most humbling, and for a lot of people, it's the scariest part, because it's the part that requires us to let go and to equip our students, to enable our students, and to trust our students to make these musical decisions, as simple for us as repertoire selection. this is the magic, guys. It's the thing that truly separates what we do from any other style, any other approach. It's that we are equipping these young people to invest in the process. And I love that. I love it so much because, like what you just said, Stephen, is so hard for us, for me, to keep up with all of the various styles and songwriters and, you know, who's hot on TikTok right now. My students teach me, and that's awesome, and that's a humbling thing. And my job is to help navigate that and help drive that train so that they can be successful. So, hey, I am so glad to have had this opportunity with you, Stephen, and looking forward to meeting the rest of you guys that are watching on Zoom. So we'll see you in just a few minutes. Thanks a lot. Stephen, finish us off.
Yeah, it's been awesome to be with you. We're going to be with you guys on Zoom now. We'd love to talk, hear some questions, talk about anything that might interest you, and also hear what's working for you guys as well. So as for me, Stephen Potasic from Samford University, I'm thankful for your time and look forward to talking to you here.